Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because you want to get straight to the heart of interesting topics, get the full picture, but, without getting totally swamped.
Yeah, cut through the noise.
Exactly. And this time, you pointed us towards something maybe deceptively simple. The unescapable grasp. Understanding the human experience of boredom.
Right. Boredom. Sounds straightforward, but it's really not.
We all think we know it, that kind of meh feeling. But the sources you gave us, they argue it's much, much bigger than that, a really core human thing.
Absolutely. The unescapable grasp really frames it less as an annoyance and more like, well, a fundamental part of how we operate. It drives us.
So the mission today, let's unpack boredom, find out why this often unpleasant feeling sticks around and what it might actually be telling us.
It's a great topic. The source immediately challenges that surface-level view. It's about our deep need for meaning, for engagement.
Okay, so let's nail down the definition first. What is boredom, according to the source? It's not just sitting around doing nothing, right?
No, exactly. That's key. It's the unwanted feeling.
Yeah.
You want to be engaged, stimulated, interested, but you just can't connect. You're stuck.
That restlessness, that frustration.
And it's pretty much universal. Everyone, everywhere seems to experience this.
Yeah, the source makes a big point about that, and it also looks back historically. The word boredom itself is kind of modern, isn't it? Like 19th century?
Relatively speaking, yeah. But the experience, that's ancient. This source brings up these older terms.
Right, like acedia. I find that fascinating.
Acedia, ennui, tedium vitae. Different words, different times, but describing a similar kind of spiritual listlessness or weariness with life.
So the feeling's always been there, just under different names.
Pretty much. And it changes shape across our lifespan too, doesn't it?
Yeah, the source talks about that progression, like even infants showing distress if they're understimulated. That's boredom in its earliest form, maybe.
You can argue that, yeah. Then you get kids always searching, I'm bored, looking for the next fun thing.
Oh, definitely. And then adolescence. Wow. Trying to figure out who you are, what your purpose is. Boredom can feel huge then.
Absolutely. And for adults, it often creeps in through, repetitive work, routines that feel stale, maybe a lack of connection.
Uninspired cycles.
And later in life too, maybe reduced activity, social isolation. That can definitely bring on more boredom.
And the source is clear. This isn't just one gender or one culture. It hits everyone, though maybe we express it differently or different things make us bored depending on our background.
True. The triggers might vary, but the underlying feeling seems pretty constant.
So it's like this lifelong companion almost.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the meat of it then, the impact. It's not just a passing mood. It affects our state of mind, first off.
Right. The obvious negatives are there. Restlessness, frustration, maybe even anxiety or feeding into depression.
But there's a flip side too. The source mentions something about prompting bigger questions.
Yeah, that discomfort, that feeling of, is this it, can actually push us towards existential thinking. What do I find meaningful? And interestingly, just pushing through boredom, finding ways to re-engage, that builds resilience.
It's like you learn you can find or create meaning even when things feel flat.
Exactly. It proves you have agency.
And then there's how it influences our behavior. Boredom as a motivator. But it can go either way, can't it?
Oh, definitely a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can spark creativity. You're bored, your mind wanders, maybe you try something new, learn a skill, pick up a hobby.
The positive drive for novelty.
But the other edge? Well, that's seeking stimulation in less healthy ways. Risk-taking, impulsivity.
Substance abuse, overeating, just trying to escape the feeling any way possible.
And the source rightly connects this to our circumstances.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in a dead-end, monotonous job or you're socially isolated, you're just way more vulnerable to boredom taking hold.
That's not always a personal failing then. Sometimes it's the environment.
Absolutely. Lack of opportunity plays a huge role.
Which brings us to that weird effect boredom has on time. It just drags.
It's because when you're not engaged in something, your focus shifts.
Yeah.
You become hyper-aware of time itself passing. Tick, tick, tick.
With nothing interesting filling those ticks. So each second feels like an eternity.
Precisely. There's no engaging content, so time per second gets distorted.
Okay, this next part really got me thinking. Boredom in history. The idea that collective boredom could actually, move history forward.
It's a fascinating, if maybe subtle, idea. The source suggests that widespread dissatisfaction, a kind of societal ennui or boredom with the status quo, can create a yearning for change.
So people get tired of how things are, restless.
And that restlessness can build up. Think about long periods of peace even. sounds good, right?
Right.
But some argue that can breed a kind of collective boredom that makes people more receptive to, well, drastic changes, even conflict or revolution.
Wow. So boredom with the usual might fuel social movements, innovation, basically societal evolution.
It's a compelling argument. That feeling of stagnation acting as a catalyst, seeking something new, not just individually, but collectively.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit to the science. Is there like a boredom gene?
Huh. Not quite that simple. No single gene, but the source points to a likely biological basis. It involves neurotransmitters, brain structures linked to motivation, reward, attention.
So our brain chemistry is involved.
Definitely. And it seems connected to something called the default mode network, the DMN. That's kind of the brain's idle setting when you're not focused externally.
And boredom pops up when?
Maybe when those attentional networks are understimulated, or there's a mismatch between the stimulation we want and what we're actually getting. Our reward system isn't getting the hits it expects.
Makes sense. And evolutionarily, any theories there?
Yeah, the idea that it's an adaptive signal. An unpleasant feeling designed to push us out of unproductive situations. Go explore, find new resources, learn something new. Basically, don't just sit there doing nothing useful for survival.
A kick in the pants from evolution.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. And philosophy. Seems like thinkers have chewed on this one for a while. Existentialists, especially.
Well, big time. For them, boredom is often tied to confronting the potential meaninglessness of existence, that void.
Cheery stuff.
Well, yeah, sounds bleak. But the source points out it's not just about despair. That confrontation, that feeling of emptiness, can actually be the trigger for creating your own meaning. It forces the question, okay, if there's no inherent meaning, what am I going to make meaningful?
So it's anxiety-provoking, but also freeing in a way, a call to action.
That's the existentialist take, yeah. Opportunity within the void.
Now, what about fields like physics, math, logic? You wouldn't think boredom applies there. The source touches on this.
Right, it's not that physics gets bored, obviously. It's about us, how we interact with these subjects.
So they can seem boring if they're not presented well.
Exactly. Or if you don't have the background or the motivation or see the connection to anything.
Yeah.
No, yeah. It can feel incredibly tedious and boring.
It just highlights that human need for connection, right? For seeing the relevance, feeling like you're making progress, even with abstract stuff.
Absolutely. We need that hook, that sense of why does this matter?
Okay, so we've looked at what it is, how it feels, the history, the science. But what about how we, as a society, react to boredom? There seems to be a weird contradiction.
Totally paradoxical, isn't it? We seem terrified being bored. Look at the constant demand for entertainment, scrolling, notifications.
Always needing stimulation.
Right. But then we also have this tendency to judge people who say they're bored.
Yeah.
Like, oh, only boring people get bored.
Yeah, that saying, it feels kind of harsh.
It is, and the source really calls that out. Judging someone's boredom ignores how subjective it is, how much circumstances matter, and crucially, it ignores that boredom might actually be a signal for growth.
It shuts down the conversation, basically.
Yeah. And it raises that bigger question. Why this relentless pressure for everything to be entertaining all the time? Is that actually good for us?
What does the source say? Are there downsides to that pressure?
Potentially, yes. Maybe it makes us less tolerant of any downtime, less able to just be. It might even lead to, say, dumbing down complex topics in education just to keep people amused rather than truly engaged. We might become reliant on external fixes for boredom.
But let's flip it again. Boredom isn't all bad. The source mentions some upsides, potential advantages, like creativity.
Absolutely. That mind-wandering state that often comes with boredom, that's fertile ground for creativity. Our brains make connections they might not make when they're hyper-focused.
Letting the background processes run.
Kind of, yeah. And problem-solving, too. Without constant distraction, boredom can sometimes allow for deeper processing, turning a problem over in your mind more thoroughly.
Interesting. And the big one, I think, was discipline. How does boredom connect to building discipline?
This is crucial. Think about any long-term goal learning, an instrument, getting fit, finishing a big project. There are always going to be moments that are tedious, repetitive, frankly boring.
For sure. The grind.
Exactly. And learning to tolerate that boredom, to push through it because you value the end goal. That is discipline. It's practicing delayed gratification, building mental fortitude. Boredom gives us the chance to practice that skill.
So experiencing boredom is almost like resistance training for the will.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so for everyone listening thinking, right, this is more complex than I realized, what do I actually do with this feeling in my life? The the source had some practical advice, right?
Yeah, definitely actionable stuff. First up, try to reframe it. See boredom not just as this negative thing to swat away, but as information, a signal.
Like, I'm bored. What might that be telling me?
Exactly what's missing here, what need isn't being met. And alongside that, maybe cultivate a bit more tolerance for it. Practice mindfulness, just sitting with the feeling for a moment without immediately reaching for your phone.
Okay, become more comfortable with the discomfort. What else?
Actively seek out flow activities. You know, those things that just completely absorb you where time flies. Identify what those are for you and make time for them.
Find your zone. And thinking about our environments, work, study spaces.
Yeah, can we design them to be more engaging, more autonomy, the right level of challenge? Little things can make a difference in reducing that unwanted lack of stimulation.
And having healthy ways to cope when boredom does hit.
Essential.
Yeah.
Hobbies, exercise, connecting with people, even just taking time for reflection instead of distraction. These give you positive outlets.
I think challenging that cultural pressure is important too. The idea that everything has to be entertaining.
Big time. Appreciating that some valuable things require sustained effort, that they might not be fun every single second, but the payoff is deeper.
And maybe just being a bit kinder to ourselves and others when boredom shows up. Less judgment.
Yes, definitely more empathy. Understanding it's subjective, it's influenced by so much, it's not just a character flaw.
So if we pull this all together, some logical deductions emerge from the source material. Like if you're consistently bored in one area, work, relationships, whatever, that's probably a sign of a mismatch, right?
It's a strong indicator, yeah. A mismatch between your need for stimulation, meaning, or connection and what that situation is offering you.
And the intensity of the boredom probably reflects the size of that gap.
Plausibly, yes. And thinking bigger. That societal push for constant entertainment. It might actually be backfiring, making us less able to handle boredom, potentially undermining discipline and our own internal drive.
But the key takeaway seems positive, ultimately.
I think so. Recognizing boredom as a signal, maybe an uncomfortable one, but a meaningful one, gives you power. It gives you a starting point for making positive changes.
Right. So wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear boredom isn't simple. It's not just dullness. It's woven into the human condition, surprisingly deep, and full of potential, both negative and positive.
And understanding it, really grappling with it instead of just running from it, that seems like a valuable skill for growth, creativity, that discipline we talked about.
Exactly what you, listening, are looking for: knowledge with real application.
It really is about shifting perspective. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's maybe more like an internal compass, sometimes pointing out where we need to adjust course towards more engagement or meaning.
So here's a final thought to chew on. Think about the last time you were really properly bored. What might that feeling have actually been signaling? Knowing what we've discussed today, how might you approach that feeling differently next time it tops up?
Good question to ponder.
We hope this deep dive gives you food for thought. Keep exploring how boredom works in your own life. Thanks for joining us.
This is DigitView.